To anyone watching Kuwait International Airport this week, the April ceasefire appeared to be holding. Commercial flights were finally taxiing down sunlit desert runways again, reopening vital routes across the Gulf. Then, a swarm of 30 ballistic missiles and drones tore through Kuwaiti airspace. A passenger terminal took a direct hit. More than 60 people were injured in the blast, and one Indian national was killed in the wreckage. Back in Washington, the messaging from the U.S. administration projected confidence, suggesting the conflict was effectively over. But the smoldering tarmac told a completely different story. Kuwait International functions as a massive global transit hub, serving as a critical stopover point connecting European passengers to Asian destinations. So how does a civilian airport, thousands of miles away from both Washington and Tehran, become the physical epicenter of their ongoing proxy war? To answer that, look at the Strait of Hormuz. Here, the escalation ignited when American forces fired a Hellfire missile into a cargo ship to enforce a maritime blockade. Anticipating a response, the U.S. quickly launched preemptive strikes against Iranian military infrastructure on Qashm Island. Qashm is heavily fortified. The American strikes targeted specific capabilities there, destroying drone control stations and striking near underground ballistic missile facilities. At this point, Iran's military faced a rigid geographic limitation. The immense physical distance across the ocean makes it impossible for them to launch a direct retaliatory strike on the United States mainland. Unable to reach American soil, Iran simply redefined the battlefield. They turned their cross-Gulf neighbors into their primary targets. From Tehran's perspective, Kuwait isn't a neutral bystander. It operates as an active, strategic extension of American military power. That is because Kuwait hosts a sprawling American footprint. Thousands of U.S. troops operate out of major logistics hubs and air facilities, like the Ali al-Salim Air Base, providing direct support for operations against Iran. This creates a deadly geometric problem known as strategic proximity. Looking at this map of Kuwait, you can see how the operational radius of the Ali al-Salim military base sits dangerously close to the civilian international airport. This tight physical overlap leads to conflicting intelligence about what actually caused the destruction at the terminal. Iran's Revolutionary Guards claim the damage wasn't from their drones, but from an error in an American Patriot missile system that failed to intercept a target and crashed back down into the airport. U.S. Central Command outright rejects that claim. They state there was no misfire, and that Iran deliberately guided drones directly into the civilian facility. The military reality of these attacks makes either scenario plausible because of swarm tactics. In this visualization, you can see how launching dozens of projectiles simultaneously mathematically overwhelms a defensive radar dome, ensuring a few weapons slip past the barrier. When a defense system is saturated like this, the sheer physical density of the city means that missed intercepts or falling debris will inevitably land in civilian zones. Ultimately, whether it was a pinpoint strike or a defensive misfire, the outcome is the same. Embedding high-value military hubs next to public transit guarantees civilian collateral damage. Beyond the immediate runway in Kuwait, the fallout is choking the global economy. For over 3 months now, the maritime stalemate has trapped countless commercial tankers and container ships, leaving them idling in the Strait of Hormuz. The unending timeline and escalating economic costs are now triggering a bipartisan political revolt in Washington, D.C. Lawmakers are pointing to a constitutional crisis. Under the 1973 War Powers Resolution, the executive branch must secure congressional approval for any military action lasting more than 60 days. The current conflict has blown past that legal limit. What began as a localized effort to enforce a maritime blockade has escalated into an unchecked military campaign, draining global markets and straining the limits of presidential power. Looking at the blackened terminal at Kuwait International, Tehran's message to the region is clear. Host American assets, and your infrastructure becomes part of the battlefield. That threat is already materializing elsewhere. On the exact same day, the nation of Bahrain also suffered drone strikes, targeted specifically because it hosts a sprawling U.S. naval base. For allied Gulf nations, the distinction between domestic infrastructure and foreign proxy wars is erasing. They cannot insulate their cities while simultaneously hosting major U.S. military bases. These strikes on ships and terminals suggest a shifting reality. When military hubs are embedded within public infrastructure, the safety once associated with civilian zones in the region becomes increasingly fragile.